In my direction. There we go. People can hear me. That's fantastic. Super good. Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this event on how to build the workforce needed for net zero, kindly sponsored by Region Partnership. The Labour Party has promised to make the UK a world-leading clean energy superpower by 2020, and this mission is also committed to good jobs, better skills, apprenticeships, and training. The transition to net zero is going to demand a transformation of the energy workforce. And our panel today will be discussing the job creation, reskilling and upskilling opportunities created by this. And also how to support employment across the country, boost growth and offer rewarding opportunities for workers. We'll hear from each of our speakers in turn. Tom Hoynes of Reading Partnership, Andrew Picks MP, Sue Byrne from Prospect, and Josh Endon from IPPR. And then we'll open up to the floor for questions before we wrap up. So first up, I am really pleased to welcome Tom Hoynes. Tom has worked in the energy industry for nearly 14 years. He's Director of Reed Environment at Reading Partnership. So welcome, Tom. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Yeah, delighted to be here. I think before I look at the exam question, just to give you a bit of information about who Reading Partnership are, and in particular Reed Environment. So Reading Partnership were part of the Reed group of businesses founded in 1960, I think, by Sir Alec Reed. And Reading Partnership was formed in 1998 and was one of the first private sector companies to work with New Labour on their welfare to work scheme. And Reed Environment is one of 5 divisions within Reading Partnership, and that's the division that I look at. And what Reed Environment was set up to do was look at the issues around net zero targets that the UK has and what are the barriers to those, and in particular looking at the green skills gap. We know that there are several challenges around hitting our 2030 and 2050 targets in the UK. Infrastructural, financial, technological challenges, but the green skills issue, the thousands of people that we're going to need to be into this workforce, is one of the key areas. So the big picture around where we are at the moment is obviously there is this big skills gap. Reed Environment was set up to look at particularly the green skills area and around retrofitting, which is basically looking to improve the country's housing stock, building stock. And if you look at the uptake at the moment on the skills needed in that area, we are so far behind our targets at the moment that if it stays on current course, we're not looking to get to those areas until sort of 2105. You know, we are significantly behind where we need to be. So what we're looking at is how do we go about trying to meet that challenge. And what we're doing with Reed Environment is we are partnering with and looking to set up our own training academies, looking at the green trade skills. So we work with an organisation called the Oxford Energy Academy, which is a training provider based in Oxford. They do about 50% of what they do is upskilling existing workforce into green and renewable technology. So if you're an electrician, you can go and learn how to install solar panels. If you're a gas engineer or a plumber, you can go and upskill into installing heat pumps and maintaining heat pumps, those sorts of things. But the other half of what they do is looking at new entrants, apprentices, school leavers, as well as adults, looking at apprenticeships in gas, renewables, plumbing, and getting that new workforce into the market as quickly as possible. So we've just opened up a new site in Cambridge. So we've now got 2 energy academies, each of which can take around 100 to 150 apprentices. And we are looking at further sites in different regions to work in the future. So in terms of addressing the green skills gap, there is an awful lot of work looking at some of the barriers to apprenticeships and some of the issues that particularly school leavers, that we all know that the number of apprenticeships is dropping. And in fact, we've just started some research which we have out in the field with the Social Market Foundation, looking at some of the barriers from the employer's point of view, because SMEs in particular are the core of the skilled trade and the green skills. When we talk about green skills, talking about, you know, those physical hands-on, particularly in retrofit, but they are the cornerstone of the green skills market, those SMEs, you know. And when you look at the challenges that they have to take on new apprenticeships, that's one of the things that we're particularly interested in looking at addressing. So, for example, although the numbers are dropping off, this research has found that SMEs do want to take on apprentices, and when you ask them about it, they do have ambitions to do it. But the concern is there are issues around whether it's administrative burden, whether it's risk, whether it's one of the key findings that we've seen is no real relationship with training providers, whether that's colleges or independent training providers like the Oxford Energy Academy. And that they actually have to go out and find, the difficulties of going out and finding these apprentices themselves. So what we're looking at, and in particular, there's three things that we're particularly focused on, and I think our challenges is one, the importance of the role of the independent training provider. And the reason for that is these training providers tend to be embedded within a community. They are part of that community. And we know working with OEA is that you see quite often these stories of apprentices who were with them for 10, 15 years ago, then take on their own apprentices and send them to OEA, and you get that relationship with local employers there. And if that can be built up and strengthened, and you get career paths for young people going into those skilled trade, then it makes it stronger connections for the future. So that's one. The skilled trade, this concept that skilled trade are green skills, and I think I've been to a couple of fringe events today, and one of the challenges is what are the career prospects? What does career progression look like for someone who wants to get into green skills? Because it's quite a broad term, and understanding what the career progression is going from leaving school to a green skill job. Well, if you view green skills as skilled trade as we do, then the career progression for an electrician to go into offshore wind, solar panels, whatever that may be, or a plumber to go into heat pumps, these are jobs that are already in such high demand. If you forget about the net zero targets, we already have a drastic shortage of those. You never find a plumber or an electrician who's looking for a job. There is such a demand out there. So I think that's really important, and that spells out a very clear career path for these people who might not be sure what that means. A little bit about funding reform on skills, particularly from an SME point of view. What we tend to find is some of the skills funding that's available for upskilling, whether it's boot camps or whatever form that might take, is it can be very prescriptive and quite challenging to fit around, particularly for SMEs. So you might have a contract that has a certain number of required learning hours, for example, that you have to complete within a certain window. But if you're a self-employed person, for every hour that you're training, you can't go and do a one-day course. You have to commit to, say, 60 hours. If you're a self-employed person or you work for a small company, committing to 60 hours over any period, for every hour you're training, you're not on the job, you're not earning money. So I think there needs to be some flexibility there. And then one final point just on reskilling and getting more people into the workforce, not necessarily just school leavers, but there are opportunities, and it doesn't take that long for people who want to career change into these areas to do either foundation courses or short courses. And one of the things that Reading Partnership is looking at the moment is from next month, we're going to be running the Ministry of Defence's Career Transition Partnership, which is looking at taking armed forces leavers, training them up, giving them new skills so they're ready to move into civilian life. And I think that market is a perfect opportunity to get people into green skills. So I think that's my time, probably then.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And that was a really helpful setting of the scene. So I really appreciated that. So thank you. I'm really delighted now to welcome Andrew Pace, the new MP for Peterborough and the co-chair of the LPC on apprenticeships. Prior to entering Parliament, Andrew was Director of Communications Research at the Union, and we're really pleased to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Brilliant, thank you. It feels a bit like getting the old band back together with Sue coming on, who will speak. I'm a new MP. I also feel like I've been an MP for 47 years, half of which I've spent traipsing around the rain in Liverpool. So genuinely, it's brilliant to see so many of you here. Actually, one of my great reflections this conference so far is the amount of literal energy and ideas in the fringe and in the panels about how to get this right. Because the pressure I feel as a newly elected member is that we have less than 5 years to the next general election. We've set out some incredibly ambitious plans about net zero, about how we deliver in the energy system, retrofit a whole range of things. And we will not be forgiven by either the electorate or the next generation if we don't deliver on that. So I think there is a ruthless determination from a new group of MPs like myself to get on the pitch and to start putting this in the back of the net when it comes to how we deliver on some of these ambitions. And I say that having spent many years working alongside Sue and many others in the trade union movement, but I feel man and boy, I've spoke about just transition and how we reboot our communities and nothing has happened. And certainly it's got a lot worse in the last 14 years. So look, there's a couple of things I'll say as comments, and I'd love to then get into the personal discussion. Firstly, this is a government which is about missions, and we should be really clear. The focus on clean energy, single power, and its correlation stuff is an attempt to rewire Whitehall in a way we do it. So we've not only just been ambitious, we're trying to break out the silos of decision making that we've seen, both in terms of how government departments work together to have a single mission across government, but also to the extent we want brilliant partners like Breeding Partnership, like Sue and our siblings in the union movement to be at the table. Because the ambition we've set cannot be achieved by government alone. And I will always push back and say, what do you do? It's actually what do we do? Because actually it has to be a shared endeavour. The public sector will not supply the jobs that are not power the nation. The public sector can make sure the conditions are right, and the jobs have good enough quality and set the market frameworks for other partners to get involved in delivering on that. My second point is that we have to learn from history. And our history of economic change has been lousy in this country. We have seen too many communities promise good jobs when old jobs have disappeared. The reality has been poor life expectancy, private jobs, more insecure jobs, and a life expectancy where people struggle to make ends meet. And I say that for a city which has a proud railway and engineering history that now today has one of the highest level of warehousing jobs, one of the highest level of zero-hours contracts in the country, some of the poorest adult skills, and some of the highest child poverty in the country. We have literally seen in our small part of Earth that transition, which has gone from good jobs with pride in engineering, too many people to be insecure work without that ability to make ends meet. We need to change that. And we need to understand, if we want to get this right, the public will rightly be cynical. Because their lived experience of promises has been let down, and that top-down policy where policy is done to people has resulted in things where people feel it has to be done with them. So really interesting. But I also, my third point is, skills has to be critical to this. In our bold ambition, we want to build 1.5 million new homes. We want to meet to net zero by 2030. We've got 4 homes planned. We have a range of other challenges. We simply don't have the workforce to deliver that. So actually, if you want to be serious about a conversation about net zero, it has to have a people plan behind it. And that people plan has to have a skills pipeline and an apprenticeship system behind it to deliver on that. It is simply a falsehood to say you can meet those ambitions without having an answer to some of those questions about how we do that. So it is, it should be a shame on this country that we've spent a decade where the number of people doing entry-level apprenticeships has fallen whilst our infrastructure needs to come about it. When I say entry level, the apprenticeships my mum would call decent apprenticeships, the ones we all know by it. We've grown the level of higher level ones, and I'm very proud of some of those things, but we've done that at the expense of entry level trades-based apprenticeships, which is why it's absolutely reforming the apprenticeship levy to address that engine of the economy for SMEs and others, and looking at flexibility and how we should do that. But there is no future in net zero without that people. Which leads me to 3 final reflections that I hand over, which I'd say is about people, power, and place. They're the characteristics. One, you've got to have that people plan and carry people with you. And that's why it needs to be about social partnership. Well, I think Rachel and the Prime Minister are absolutely right again this week to talk about this being pro-worker and pro-business. Everyone needs a seat at the table if we're to rebuild our country and get net zero right and delivering on that. Secondly, it's about power. Not literal power, but who makes decisions. Too many of our decisions are centralised and done. So we've got to understand who is making decisions about where investment is going. How do we share that power to ensure that the place is going? The third place is lots of green infrastructure can go anywhere, but it has to go somewhere. unless we involve communities like mine, like some of those old industrial parks, which have the skills heritage, have the pride which can fit together in some of these areas that we're talking about to deliver for Britain in the way that they did in other previous parts of the Industrial Revolution. This is our period and our time to get that right. But you've got to have a sense of place, which means we need investors, we need the market, we need private sector working alongside local government and regional government, alongside unions and other social partners to understand how we deliver that. And that's going to be really important. My final point, which is about planning and delivery. If we can change the planning law to speed things up, but people will not consent to things done to them. And there will be difficult choices. I said earlier, again, there is no net zero unless you're willing to kill to climate. That's a really difficult conversation. But if you tell me you're against pylons, you're not serious about net zero. We've got to be in the right place in the right time, but we've got to be able to have these difficult conversations. Because whether it's been nuclear or renewables or skills, we spent a generation in this country ducking the difficult choices, and those deadlines have been brought back, back, back. So this is about a government that Rachel said today in her speech. It's time to get going. It's time to deliver. And that to me seems to be the thing that keeps me awake at night. I've got the ambition, the government said it to the country. We now need people from the table telling us to
Very much, and a good rallying call in there as well. So everyone's contribution, and I'm now very pleased to welcome Sue Ferns. Sue is Deputy General Secretary of Prospect, where she leads the union's work on equal opportunity, campaigning, communication, also science, engineering, and sustainability. We're really pleased to have you with us today, Sue. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. So first of all, let's understand the challenge that we've got and the scale of the challenge that we've got. A couple of years ago, National Grid did a really important piece of work, which was suggesting we're going to need hundreds of thousands of workers to deliver the net zero transition. And of that, a proportion, about a third, is to replace workers who will be retiring in the next few years. The rest of it is about new skills, new workforce. Climate Change Committee has said that electricity demand is likely to double by 2050. So this is a challenge which is about increasing the throughput, the numbers of people who are skilled to achieve the transition, but it must also be about the quality of jobs that are available to them. It cannot just be about numbers, it has to be about job quality. As Andrew's already said, we've got plenty of jobs that don't provide much quality, and we owe it to people to do better than that. So I think there are a few things that we need to do, and I think employers have a key role in this, but I also think that there's a role for government as well. So firstly, on apprentices and graduates, look, the energy sector, which I know well, is a sector that still provides good quality apprenticeships and graduate schemes, and that's important. But what we really welcome is Labour's commitment to be more flexible about the way it uses apprenticeship money, which I think is absolutely vital. And one of the ways in which it needs to do that is, I think, to bring in more people through vocational routes. We are going to need highly skilled and specialist roles, but actually this is about bringing in skills at all levels and good jobs at all levels. By that, I include people in our communities who are not currently in education, training or employment. We have over the years, I think, a lot of employers moved to increase their formal academic requirements for jobs. And a lot of people who could be working in these sectors can't meet those requirements for maths or for English. Now, if they need them for their jobs, then they should have them. But we represent lots of people who over the years have come in through more flexible routes, who are very highly skilled, doing their jobs really well. We mustn't let academic qualifications become an unnecessary barrier to entry, is what I'm saying. Secondly, we can't just be recruiting the same people who are already doing these jobs. We need to diversify and expand the workforce. And by that, I do include diversifying to include greater representation of women and people from minority ethnic communities. Look, if you look at the energy sector, if you look more broadly across green industries, they aren't diverse enough. They are excluding people who could be a part of this workforce, people who could be doing good jobs. Now, I know lots of companies have EDI programs, lots of leaders are very proud of the programs that they've got, but let's be honest, they're not shifting the dial. They're not shifting the dial, pace of change just isn't quick enough. And we need to think about not just new entrants, but people in mid-career, people who may be in mid-career already in these kinds of work, but also bringing in people from other sectors. And that takes me to the issue about just transition. Maybe everybody in this room knows what just transition means. Believe me, if you go out and ask people, they don't know what it means. They don't relate to it. They don't necessarily know what a green skill is. It's park keeping or it's litter picking. Nothing wrong with park keeping or litter picking jobs, but we're getting our messaging wrong. And this, I think, plays to Andrew's point as well. This can't be top down. It's got to be informed by community and by place. So language is important. If people need reskilling or retraining, it's equally important that that can be done on a flexible basis. If you've been in employment for 30 years and the last thing you did was an apprenticeship or a vocational qualification, you're not going to go back to college full time. It's probably you probably can't afford to, you probably don't want to. We need to be much more flexible and modular about how we provide training. But let's be honest, we also need to be more realistic about how we pay trainers. If you're a welder or a plumber, why would you become a trainer when you can earn twice as much on the tools? Yeah, so you've got to think about investing in that as well. And finally, I would say, as part of just transition, that's got to be linked to an industrial strategy, because actually, what are you transitioning people to? Where are the jobs they're going to do? They've done that transition. Now, if we have an industrial strategy, which brings jobs, which brings supply chain jobs, new investment to those communities, then that's worthwhile. People can see the point of it and they will engage. So I think, as I say, employers still have a key role to play, working in partnership with government and with unions, because it's quite right, you can't do this to people, you can't make people retrain. I think we as unions are trusted partners with the workforce, so we have a role to play here. And it's really important that government takes a cross-departmental approach to this. We have yet to discover exactly how Skills England will work, and obviously it's located in the Department for Education. You've got the Office for Clean Energy Jobs in Desnes. Vocational qualifications are an important part of this, but it is about bringing knowledge and understanding what skills are needed in a practical context.
Thank you very, very much. We have one more panelist before we open up the floor to questions. So finally, I'm really pleased to welcome IPPR's Josh Emden. Josh is a senior research fellow at IPPR, focusing on just transition policy, with a particular interest in heat decarbonisation, industrial decarb, and green jobs and skills. Welcome, Josh.
The nice thing about going last is you get to hear what everyone else says. The downside is there is already. So I will try and add a few extra thoughts. I think that I'll try and split it into three quick sort of areas. I guess the first is trying to establish how to actually create jobs in the first place, as Sue said. So the need for doing so, and the need for creating demand in the first place. The second thing is identifying who will be affected. I'm going into a bit more detail, looking at skills and transferability. And the third thing would be some reflection on some sort of policy recommendations we can start to look at right now. The first thing is obviously, as Sue mentioned, we are very, very good in the UK in schooling lots of renewable energy. We have, despite lots of problems with planning and grid infrastructure, all those sorts of things, we are the second largest installed onshore wind in the world. I think even with the onshore wind ban in England, we are still something like the eighth largest installed onshore wind in the world. We're very bad at building manufacturing content to go with it. We don't have as many manufacturing facilities as we should have, and those manufacturing facilities that do this, we could will be scaling up a lot more. There's a lot more automation structure we can put in place. And if we're doing that, when we're creating the jobs, the people can see in the first place, those jobs also need to be coupled with making sure they are with policies, so not just sort of having 0-hour contracts, hire arrangements, or temporary work, that sort of thing. Decent jobs that people know and see in their community. We also need to understand, though, what the actual impact is on the existing workforce, on apprenticeships, on people coming into the workforce for the first time. We need more data on that fundamentally. There are lots of really great examples that have been mentioned today of things that people are doing, and that's really, really promising to see what's happening. But we also need to understand economy-wide how related people's jobs are to each other, because that can help to inform medical training that might be needed between different organisations. We've done some research on this. We've looked at every occupation in the UK and how transferable they are between each other. We found that around 90% of jobs in oil and gas are quite readily transferable to another job in either a green or a climate compatible sector. And what does climate compatible mean? What we're saying is that the way we're defining it is it's a sector where it's not necessarily anything, maybe it's not in offshore wind, maybe it's not in nuclear, whatever it might be, but it's still going to be needed in the future. And I think from a just transition perspective, we do need to be clear. We're not necessarily saying every single worker needs to go into a industry. We can have people going into other industries that are good jobs that will be part of the future. So it's about identifying who's going to be affected and helping them with to move into those different sectors. But we need the data around that. So that's something that we've started to do. We need to match that with what that looks like in terms of the training needs and how long the training might take. Final reflection on recommendations behind that, how you might go about putting them in place. So we do have lots of different sort of careers advice services, some of them private, some of them public. We need something that's much more comprehensive. We're going for sort of public employment service. We actually help people potentially drawing some of this analysis about the transferability of jobs to help people to either the workforce for the first time, or if they're already existing, moving to a different job. We're also looking at other things that need to go into a workforce plan. So it's one thing to sort of say, yes, we're going to commit to having just transition sort of support workers, we're going to increase the number of apprenticeships, we're going to have better apprenticeships, but we also need to try and quantify what that looks like in put some talks on the table for negotiation. And I say this sort of taking straight from a lot of things that you've been before and discussed about, but things like funded right to retrain as commercials. So some people just don't have time to, if they're working a 60-hour apprenticeship, for example, they won't have time to those hours. So having a funded right to retrain whilst you're actually on the job retraining, that's the really important. Having a funded right to interview, for example. So having sort of, if you've got a certain level of skills or qualifications and there's a job available for you to have good skills for, then making sure that that's very to perform the job. There are lots of other things that we can get into. I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunity to discuss some questions. But these are some of the things that we can start with what takes to actually get into some substantive discussion about it.
Thank you very much, Josh. That's perfect timing. We'll open up the floor. Thank you to our panel for getting us started, giving us lots to think about, and no doubt inspires questions and hands shooting us already. What I'm going to do is I'll take lots of hands. I'm going to take a few questions at a time, and then I'll do my best to direct questions across the panel. But panelists, if there's something that you want to comment on, please don't let me stop you from contributing. And I'll take here. And first one, and then directly to your right.
Hi, my name is Kate Young and I head up policy at the charity Ingenuity. Lots of welcome mentions of addressing siloed thinking in Whitehall, but I just want to ask the panel specifically about siloed thinking within the Department for Education. There's been a very disproportionate focus on higher education rather than further education, and even within further education, a disproportionate focus on pre-19, when we know for the net zero challenges, we're mostly talking about the existing workforce. So how do we get this government to address that disproportionate attention in DFE? Thanks.
Hello, Angus Hill from WA Communications, working with the Viking CCS cluster, which for those of you who don't know is the carbon capture projects in the Humber. My question, so the Viking cluster has a really good project going on with the Catch project in the Humber, which is training apprentices in things like welding, going from 100 a year to 1,000 by 2030. And it's a really good example of a kind of place-based project, which is getting people into net zero skills. Obviously, projects like that are dependent on big infrastructure projects, carbon capture in this case, getting the green light and go ahead from government. So I guess the question is, one is how can we move faster with those big projects? And secondly, how can DESNES and DFE join up, make sure there's the right pipeline of projects and skills in the right place?
Hi, Amy Richardson from Grayling. First of all, thank you very much. It's been hugely insightful. I just wanted to pick up on the types of sectors that we're talking about when we're talking about green skills, because as lots of you said, it's such a broad term. And we hear a lot about kind of the power sector and housing and construction, which are all undeniably hugely important. But how do we carry forward that energy and indeed those policy solutions to other sectors that aren't necessarily like the big hitters? I say this with the resources and waste sector in mind, but that could apply to anything.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So a bit of a theme across those first two questions around breaking down silos and working together. So I think if Andrew, if I come to you first, maybe take those first two.
So hot and steamy in this room, the glasses keep steaming up. Okay, and then the first two questions.
Yes, so first one, disproportionate emphasis on the FE, and second, moving fast from big projects and joining up thinking between DESNES and the FE.
Yeah, I think I think so. The first ever question I had the privilege of asking on Parliament was actually on how does DESNES link up with education and the skills that work through some of that plan. And I'm really pleased that in the work around the energy, my audience is going to be spent on bills, so we're going to tease some of this out in the legislative committee over the coming weeks how this works. Is that part of that mission focus, you've now got part for education, DESNES and other plans working together to see how you have mission skills. So it's a clear message from the ministers to do something together. You know, there could be a case for a radical reshaping of where apprentices sit, schools sit in the Parliament. I don't think that's the space we're in. But how you link them together, you can do that. Ultimately, departments look like their biggest players. So department of education is almost a schools level department, and then it's some universities, and then we're going to further education. That's just the nature of the beast. People go with their biggest portfolios, and there's nothing wrong with that. With schools are really important. How we then reboot it is by putting apprenticeship on that team alongside industrial strategy, alongside DESNES to develop skills. So I think some of those things are coming in that sense. And in conversations about how we apply apprenticeship skills levy, probably focused in beyond apprenticeships. But actually you've got some really skilled people who are just missing the bit about where you so they don't need to do a whole apprenticeship, they just need a few careers, how you do some of that career transition. And actually that's not going to be a big stakes issue. That's going to be around working with colleges and see really excellent providers like green environmental partnerships and providing some of that multiplicity because actually changing. We're building the opens the new year Green Technology Centre, which the college got through some towns funding in the old government to invest in infrastructure there. And what we're talking about by doing the jobs is actually just it's like putting a bit of a green line on top of traditional things. So we are great in car maintenance. We will our new apprentices to be able to learn how to do batteries and also we've got construction workers also need to be learning about car installation and we know the technology will change in future years, so we're getting mindset change people to have the staff but then drop back into that. So actually for us, who's going to install the EV maintenance, who's going to look after the batteries? We're a blue collar city. We can quickly become a green collar city because these are the jobs that we're addressing suits and takes a green collar job. But people they want their children, the kind of jobs which are still going to be here in 5 or 10 years. And that's where the sustainability comes into it, building out to that promise and jobs to different skills.
Well, do you want to end this question in a moment, just to see if anyone else has got comments, jump in on those.
Just one comment on Kate's question around DFE. I think obviously I'm slightly biased in terms of independent training providers, and I think that the role that they can and should be playing in the transition. But I think one thing, and this goes to speaking also away from the sort of the 19 and older, those who want to do short form courses and things. I think from DFE, I think more flexibility around funding provision and the requirements for funding for training for funding that doesn't necessarily suit those organisations that aren't set up to run the administration required behind it. And what I mean by that is, if you're a small independent training provider or a small college and you don't have the administrative backup to, run these contracts, to bid in for it, right, to all the supporting work that needs to go behind it, it's very easy for them to say that that's not for us, we'll let the big guys do that. But I think that the smaller independent colleges and training providers have such a key role in all of this, that flexibility to get funding into them, I think is crucial.
Just a quick point on the sort of working together and silence. I guess one of the benefits of looking at sort of transfer of skills is that you can work out how closely related some of these things actually are. So as Andrew said, particularly on heating, the retraining to into heat pumps is a matter of weeks. It shouldn't be anyway. There are other examples of this, right, where if you work with oil and gas, there are lots of qualifications that are almost identical to offshore wind, and there's an offshore skills passport that's sort of in the works, but it's sort of stalled. So if we can hurry that up to kind of get the offshore skills passport moving properly, then it means that we don't have to have people who are working in the industry who could move over to other industries really quite quickly, having to retake training schemes, essentially the same thing that they can do for years. So there's just to sort of emphasize, there are lots of opportunities like that, but actually if we could have the data and some transfer to the other levels, they're probably not going to be
In terms of learning from the energy sector, looking across other sectors, what available there.
I think Amy's point is a really good one. So we have in Desmond's energy jobs. But actually, if you're thinking about energy infrastructure and energy projects, it leaves a lot of environmental skills and bring those around as well. Now, maybe Skills England brings that together, but I think at this stage, for me, the jury's a bit out in how joined up Desmond's different might be in this. And at the moment, it feels like there's a greater focus within Desmond's than there is within Desmond. And I do think that balance, it doesn't seem quite right at the moment. So I think that's one of the work we do on this.
I'm just reflecting on what Sue says, and I think that's absolutely right. Different departments start off with different priorities and different speeds, and what we need is getting everyone to get the table. So we need to switch there as well. But come back to that.
I'll open up to a few more questions. There was a very quick hand that went up. I think not the road for the back car then through the light section. So I'll take that one. There's by the door, and why not? Can you pass it forwards to in the glasses just to your
thanks for this opportunity. Just wondering if it's at all significant as a problem that there's no single definition of green jobs.
Why not? Thank you very much.
I'll keep the punchy questions going then. What role would you like to see Skills England taking within the transition?
Hi, my name's Jerome. I run a clean energy technology business based in Northern Ireland. It's been really great to hear some of the enthusiasm and see the enthusiasm in the hall. My business is growing very quickly. So it would be great to hear more about how further education is going to feed businesses like mine with the skills that we need, and also the skills of that our customers need, because we can't grow as a business because there's literally not enough people to put the stuff that we build up poles. We can't scale as a business because our customers can't scale their skill sets. So please, more further education. It'd be great to hear how that's going to happen and accelerate.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, is there a problem that we don't have jobs?
Well, I know there are different definitions of clean jobs. Is it a problem? I think I come back to my previous point. As long as we're talking to people about things they can understand and relate to and think that they can be part of, I think that's the key issue, whether we label it green or not. To me, it's a secondary issue. My point is by labelling it green, people exclude themselves because they think they're not part of that. That's the issue for me.
Josh?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think this goes back to some of the things we've done already looking at from a worker's perspective. Does it matter if it's accounts as green or not? Perhaps not as much if some of the work good as a decent range of options that they can from too. So from that perspective, it's absolutely matters like this. I really come to the point about actually using language that they can understand as opposed to calling something specifically. I think obviously if you're looking at it from the industry perspective, then there's a broader point about what we call the green industry writ large. We need more information about what green taxonomy looks like for investment and those places, but that's slightly sort of different perspective. And that probably doesn't matter. This is sort of a different world from what we're talking about green skills and training, where the actual use of language needs to be where they are, where we're at.
Andrew, I'll come to you on the role of Skills England. Do you feel free to?
Yeah, I think Skills England would have a much wider role than just green transition, and that's clearly what the big focus is for the government. So I'd rather we have a skills focus within clean energy supervision and within ambitions for government. Each of them come together to work out how to deliver that. There will be a bit of time. To me, Skills England's definition that will come over weeks to me is how will that set the direction of travel of purpose and some rules around how we can be involved. So I'm more interested in starting with the grassroots and what do we want the skills and growth levy to do, and how do we move some of the barriers bureaucracy we saw in the operation levy as was. We've heard about some of those things. I'm very afraid about this has to be a focus on working English and maths rather than academics and English and maths. We have to get that right. Yeah, but you can work, you can understand the instructions, do your invoices, talk to your colleagues, keep your colleagues safe at work, speak to your customers, clients, into the maximum, and do the job. That's the English and maths you need rather than some academic standard. We can change some of those framework requirements. I think the flexibility around getting businesses much more involved in some standards and frameworks. They have to be about delivering jobs in the real world and the next jobs. And I think the balance of the existing scheme has been too far in favour of top-down standards rather than really business-driven. And there may need to be flexibility in it. You may end up with a framework whereas it's 75 to 80%. I think the conversation earlier on common standard, some flexibility based on local need, some tailored guidance depending on the job market, depending on the demographic, depending on the space. Some flexibility in location specific. There's flexibility. I'm really interested in the OU model. So I think about is there some modularity you can do in this? Because actually, for some young people, a 4-year course may seem a huge amount of life they've lived quite down, and that might seem a difficult thing. A small business teacher may not be able to take on someone for a whole framework maybe 3 years, but actually you might be able to earn some module credits in one job, which you can then transfer with a provider to take to the next job, so that both SME employers don't have to feel they're taking on the HR environment that we do, but actually people get good standards to be part of the framework we then build into. That could be really exciting for whether it's in farming, tradespeople or others, getting some of that flexibility we need, and then using people like yourself or others to kind of bring hold to ensure those standards apply to not dropping standards, creating flexibility. To me, some of those elements are creating a system which can apply equally in the creative industries, which has lots of SMEs, as well as in green trades, green skills in particular, almost a universal setting in the direction of travel rules. To me, that would be really exciting sector going to do to deliver on it. Not really about the money, in my view, it's about the plumbing and wiring of how apprenticeship levy works. It's just not working. I think some of that is a lot of this.
Do you have any thoughts on the role of skills England, but also picking up on Jerome's point around that sort of pipeline?
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know what technology it is you're putting up, but maybe that's a conversation after. Yeah, look, I think building a specific workforce, I think there's a common theme across a lot of what we said, which is around flexibility. And I think the ability, if training providers or businesses who are looking to upskill their workforce to find a new workforce have the flexibility, particularly to access funding in order to develop a workforce that is right for their needs, then I think that's going to be crucial. On terminology, I don't think green jobs is a particularly useful term because it is so all-encompassing. You know, when you go and listen to sort of different people talking about this, you hear about green jobs and greener jobs, and you know, where a green job might be a wind farm installer, or a greener job could be a supply chain manager who has to be responsible for the carbon footprint of their organisation, where it's adding a green layer onto that existing job. I think terminology is important, but I think what's more important is clear career progression opportunities for people who want to get into a green job. So for a 14-year-old, we know that the under 18 demographic is so much more, you know, the environment and climate change is one of the biggest, if not the biggest things that they're concerned about from countless polls across the UK. But if you go to them with a rather unhelpful go and get a green job, then I think what they need to see in order to go into apprenticeships, to further education, to putting things up polls, what they need to be able to do is have a clear career path, and that can be spelt out with the right terminology rather than a sort of umbrella catch-all. So I think it is important. And from Skills England, I think the main thing for me is not necessarily a role from them, but a perception. Their view on things is try and see things through the lens of SMEs, who, as I said earlier, are the core of what I would call sort of the green skills in terms of green skill trade. The SME are the core of that market. You know, plumbers, electricians, gas engineers, those skilled trades are the vast majority of sole trade, SME, you know, micro businesses. Skills England needs to see things through their lens and the challenges that they have in order to encourage more people into there. So it's more of a perception rather than a role.
Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll open up for great, I'll take a few more questions then, please. Right at the back, standing.
Thank you. Great panel. I'm Frances Foley from Compass. It was really great to hear Andrew say about this top-down culture, and I think everyone on the panel kind of reiterated the point. My question is about combined authorities and metro mayors in this perspective, and also with the acknowledgement that you'll hear a lot of people around conference saying, we don't want to do two people, we don't want this to be top-down, but we all know that actually the UK system does default to that top-down model. So I'm particularly interested in hearing from Andrew, but also from other people on the panel, in what concretely could be done to help devolve power and put subsidiarity right at the centre of the green job agenda. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris Bond from Trustmark, and thanks to the panel for a really insightful discussion. Trustmark is the only government accredited quality assurance scheme for work in and around the home, including energy efficiency, decarbonisation, retrofit, etc. And we are very focused on the skills agenda and the shortage of skills, especially as people have said that we have got an ageing workforce here, and the problem is going to get worse and not better. Although it's really encouraging to hear some of the work that's already going on, and we would welcome the opportunity to work with those on the panel to see if we can contribute to this this agenda. Thank you. The question arises for me And it's a point that Sue made. We've got more than half of the population who are underrepresented amongst that workforce, and that is women. We've also got a lot of people, for instance, on the autistic spectrum, who would be well equipped to be trained in this area. Only 14% of young people on the autistic spectrum are in employment at all. And that is a terrible waste and a tragedy and waste of lives for them. So are there ways in which we can perhaps widen the focus of our lens to include not only women, but other groups who are not represented at the moment?
Thanks very much. Andrew Cockcroft. I'm from Hinkley Point C in Somerset, so the country's first nuclear power station for a good few decades. Reflection and a question from me at the very beginning of our project. We exhausted every single steel fixer in the country really to start building our project. We're a private enterprise, and it's just a general view from the panel really is sort of how you see the future of skills and sort of whether it will be an entirely public sector sort of endeavour and where you see the private sector fitting in, because I think we had to take some steps and clearly we can't keep going it alone as an individual organisation. So yeah, that partnership and what you see the future be.
Thank you very much. An interesting theme emerging there around representation, so around representation of women, but also the diversity of opportunity, see representation, but also in terms of regional inequalities as well, and how we can take concrete steps to devolve power. So perhaps if we start with that point around concrete steps, but also bring in the question around how to spread opportunity across the country. And also, yeah, start with Andrew.
I think my answer on top down and the evolution has changed in the last couple of years. Because actually I see a critical role from there as it evolved. We have what it came to grow. I think there's a greater role for skills to come down and to go. But here's where my mind's changed. The biggest pressing issue to me is we need to get this done. And actually evolution may be in different ways. So I think ways to do it, but actually I'm just pragmatic about how we get done. In my place, I would say who would be the critical partner to bring together the coalition of people who can get the skills right to get us going quickly. I think probably colleges, we get providers, colleges and providers together, but they're the ones doing it who see it from the right place. So actually I would bypass the mayor to go straight there. But I would help the mayor join me in doing it. But actually that's the quickest route to outcome. Sorry, that sounds really geeky. But I said there's less than 5 years to the next election. We need to get going on this. But we're pragmatically, who are the people doing it? But I think there's room for everyone. In some places, it's a movement there, in others, it could be, I think it's in the LPC system, or maybe to get a coalition of independent providers who have that agility, then we can just start flicking the switch and get going on some of this. And it definitely needs to have businesses around that coalition table. That is where the risk will come. People employing people and doing that delivery. In other places, it might be a different challenge to what we've got. We have a surplus of young people in schools, plumbing, all these tasks. We have a system that doesn't work on that. We are ready to go. The system, it's a system failure, not a demand failure in terms of that. And I think that quicker we can give that to businesses and others and say, get going on some standards. Quicker we can turn them that way. I think providers, say, you take the risk of scaling up quickly to respond to it. That's going to be quicker than waiting for the public sector to consulting to do that. In others, it may do. My mission is to get this done. In 5 years' time, I don't know what the next government's going to be. I hope it's our government, but I don't know. I'm going to leave a legacy, which is we're as close to net zero as we can get. It's getting over to them.
So, how to spread the opportunity and increase the diversity both regionally and
So first of all, I think we've got to change the way we think about this. We talk about neurodivergent people because they're not in employment and it's the right thing to do, but it is the right thing to do. There's a really strong business case for doing it. We have thousands of neurodivergent members who are good, so good at what they do because of their neurodivergence. Same with women, will spectrum achieve. So, look, I think there's a lot that can be done quite practically in terms of increasing recruitment. I think there's quite a lot of lazy recruitment practice. We tend to follow what we've done before. We don't think about how jobs can be done or might be done. I think the New Deal employment rights bill that we will see soon should be a catalyst to every employer to think about their employment decisions and their talent as well. I think we need to do that. But getting people in is one thing. We've also got to keep them in the work. And that means, in a lot of cases, if we're being honest, our workplace cultures are not contributing to well. So we need to do more about that. And that's why we want about chief executive industry leaders making statements is fine. But everybody from every community will judge their working life by their day-to-day experience in the workplace. And that's what we've got to do. That is
Josh, be interested in your thoughts on recognition of diversity in the sector, but also actually particularly on the point around the regions and nations.
Yeah, so on the diversity, I completely agree with Stuart. I think also there's just another diversity there's that challenge of opportunity to showcase where it makes a difference. Like only at the bottom line that's the case. And then there are plenty of studies that show the top 50 companies how they can do it in actually doing diversity. And make sort of it clear that this is something that benefits them, and in turn it needs to be responsible for the culture. So I think that we need to be showcasing more of that. We all can do too. It's I think. On the regional aspect of things, I guess from it depends what kind of industry you're looking at. So if you're looking at things like energy efficiency retrofitting, that's going to be needed everywhere. Probably no matter where you are. There are lots of businesses at the moment that are concentrated in the east and the southeast. And we've done some mapping that shows that and we're going to need these businesses to spring up all across the country, a lot more. So as to how you do that, I agree with Andrew about taking practical steps as to how to get this done most quickly. For some other sectors, though, it's worth reflecting for wind in particular. Up to around 75% of onshore wind are going to need to be in development reservations. And around 25% or maybe more for offshore wind will be in development reservations. So these will be the developed areas where we need to be collaborating with those development reservations. And we can collaborate with them and work out how to support them with skills. It might also mean further discussion around developed funding and how to accelerate this funding situation there. So it's not just working with NES for outside development reservations as well. The final thing I would say in terms of what does it look like for the future, what does it look like in a public goal? I guess to sort of touch on funding briefly, obviously everyone's aware of the last decade or so we've seen slashes to the education budget, so that needs to kind of start to be restored and revitalised. I think we've also been calling for in the past £1 billion annual increase in the green transition fund. I think others and some similar figures as well, to sort of actually put towards exactly the kind of training that we're talking about. And that is something that we would see in the development project, in addition to encouraging the projects that are quite investment training.
yeah, of course, we're not touched on Andrew's question. I just wanted to comment briefly on that. I think this is a partnership between public and private sector. I think good enterprises should do as much as they can. I think has been exemplary in terms of the training and the apprenticeships that it's run for local people. But actually, every employer doing that, that's actually not. The scale of the challenge we've got, the scale of the endeavour is that it needs to be joined up. And we know conversations we've had with officials that actually there isn't a set of reliable information at the moment. And so, we like that foundation situation. But the other thing that we need to point out is if this is part of an industrial strategy, the skill strategy, we need to be planning ahead as well. And I know, and we can do that to a degree, there is a role here for the state in doing that forward planning. And actually that would help in terms of training provision and skills provision too. And clarity over what the industrial capacity is, which will also help investors.
And I know you touched on the executive relationship. You want to
I agree to it. So this two things, one step to do with it. Do you see interest taken by the sector, the market shaping, and sort of planning on get the best of the
Only one thing to add on, particularly around looking at large infrastructure projects that was mentioned, was we obviously, as an organisation, look at different opportunities that we think might be coming up in the future, and skills provision around large infrastructure projects is obviously one of those. Nothing major to add other than, I think Sid mentioned it earlier, is one of the big hurdles that we see with those potential projects coming up is who's going to be training these people. That finding good quality trainers in permanent fixed full-time roles near to where they live is difficult enough at the moment. If you want to set up a pop-up training centre for 2 or 3 years near a large infrastructure project, where are we going to find it? And I don't have the answer. You know, I'm going through a recruitment process trying to get trainers at our new centre in Cambridge at the moment. It's incredibly difficult, and I think the whole market is looking at, well, there's the soon to be retired, coming to the end of their career, you know, want to give back, and that's all well and good, but everyone's looking at them, and my suspicion is that there's not going to be enough of them to carry what we need. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's a big potential hurdle down the line.
Thank you very much. We'll move to closing remarks from the panel. Over to take Josh, Sue, Tom, and just very brief final thoughts.
On the wrong way around, it's fine. So try and answer this time. I guess we discussed this about the need for coordination and collaboration between the three important things. I think the rallying from manager is really useful. I think we need to go out and do something. I think that's why I'm quite excited to have these consequences. It's like the first way government really wants to go out and set out structure. So there's not a huge amount more to add than what discussed already on. Just looking forward to actually engage in the challenge. Yeah, if there's anyone out there that wants to get into it's doing
I think that it's about the industrial strategy, integrated within the skills strategy, and about getting on with the I suppose my message to the government is there's an enormous amount of goodwill and consensus about what needs to be done. Don't work with us. We didn't get that in previous government. It's all a big part of this. And we're working together to all sorts of community to bring to it. And so it is about. So I think it's fun.
Your final thoughts.
Yeah, just to I think I've said it a few times, terminology around green skills are skilled trade, and the importance around bearing that in mind. I think there is good quality careers out there for people entering the workforce, due to enter the workforce, with very clear career progression and opportunity in very well paid opportunities as well. And I think making sure that we're extremely clear that when we're talking about green skills, those are the sort of jobs that can be doing it. I think should be appealing if we can get more people onto apprenticeships. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but please read our impact report. It should be on your check.
Thank you.
Firstly, thank you to Reed, Prospect, I'll keep the argument being space. And you know, genuinely positive energy around these kind of issues and in my panel period doing this kind of subject area, it's generally been a malaise, a slightly wrong to get quite got there and doing it. So I think we should capture this moment, but it needs to be positive. There's genuine innovation going on, clean tech, in the private sector, desired by government to work differently in partnership, desired by unions with incredible knowledge of heritage like possibility, but not there to deliver that in terms of the work. So we have a genuine opportunity to reshape our country through this medium of, I think, skills in terms of getting to net zero is a big thing. Skills is going to be the thing. You expect government to hold the officers by seeing it. This is a time for really, we have done the same numbers. It's about the partnership work. Genuine good discussions are really opportunity. There's an opportunity for us to reframe genuine partnerships.
Thank you very much. Very, I think, thorough and interesting diagnosis of the challenge, suggestions of ways forward, and clearly some questions still remaining. But for now, very grateful for the opportunity the event and